Hi, this is Aditya from Lighthaven. I'm in the beautiful ancient city of Varanasi, which is supposed to be one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. And today I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about the similarities between Sanatan Shastra Vidya, the ancient Indian art of warfare, as well as what my foundation art is, Pekiti Tirsia, the Filipino martial art. Around about 2020, around about when I got my Tuhon rank, Grand Tuhon, my teacher, he gave me a task. And he said that he wants me, he said, Adi, I want you to find the connections between what we do over here in Pekiti and the arts of India, the martial arts of India. Because he's always maintained that a lot of the Filipino martial arts, especially his art, has its origins and its roots in India. Now, before we go any further, again, this is what I have found through my research. I know that there's a lot of other research contradicting this. I'm not saying one is true. I'm definitely not claiming that what I'm saying is fact. I'm only presenting what I have found. And hopefully this will act as a catalyst for you to do your own research so that we can learn together more and more and more about not just our Indian arts, but also the Filipino martial arts. So the story goes that one day I was talking to Grand Tuhon and I had very sillily cut myself with one of my own knives. And I was telling him about how that had happened and just a story around it and how silly I felt about it. And he turned around to me and said, actually, it's not a bad thing at all. Because you see, Addy, the goddess, she lives on the edge of the blade and she's always thirsty for blood. And so by feeding her your own blood, you pacified her. And so she won't seek other people's blood. And so now this was a very interesting story for me. I catalogued it somewhere in the back of my mind. And I think maybe later that year or the next year, I was talking to Gurudev Nidar Singh, who is the main teacher of Sanatan Shastra Vidya. And I was asking him why in Sanatan Shastra Vidya they worship the goddess, they worship Kali or Chandi and not Shiva, because in Indian mythology, Shiva is the god of destruction and the greatest warrior. And he said to me that Shiva is mercurial. Sometimes he'll give you his attention, sometimes he won't give you his attention. But you see, Kali, the goddess, she lives on the edge of the blade and she's always thirsty for blood. And that's why we worship Kali. Now, I had not told Gurudev Nidar Singh about the story that GT told me, neither had I told GT about the story that, I had not even heard this story at that point of time. But I found it very interesting that in two very different places, you have almost identical stories relating to not just warriors, but their belief in the goddess and how the goddess plays a huge part in how they see themselves as warriors and how they see the act of war. And it's almost as if they are paying homage, or it's a sacrifice to the goddess. Every time that they kill someone, they are sacrificing to the goddess to gain her favor. Now I'm going to talk about some of the technical similarities between the arts. I'm going to start off with what, at least in my opinion, is the most important thing in the weapon arts, and that is footwork. Both in Pekiti as well as many other Filipino martial arts, as well as in Shastra Vidya, you have this idea of the triangle getting off center line so that I can get back onto center line and attack it. In Pekiti, we use the 45-degree angle, and it's used for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is especially when I'm empty hands, if I step 45 degrees, my opponent is there, I can immediately reach him with all of my tools, my hands as well as my legs. If I go beyond 45 degrees, I'll no longer be able to reach him with my hands. I can kick him, but I can't punch him. If I go even further back, I can only kick him with my back leg and I can't reach him with anything else. So this 45 degrees step allows me to immediately transition from counterattack to, from offense to counter offense. And this is going to be a theme that's going to keep coming again and again and again. So both arts have this 45-degree step. However, Shastra Vidya elevates this a little bit, or changes this a little bit, or tweaks it a little bit. And for them, not only do they have a 45-degree angle step, but they also bisect that and they make it a 22.5-degree step. Now, I obviously am not good enough to pull this off in a real fight. It also requires a lot more confidence. It requires a lot better judgment of range and timing. And if you get it wrong, there's a higher, there's a lower margin of error. In 45-degree steps, there's a higher margin of error. If I start tightening this, there's a lower margin of error. The idea behind the 22.5-degree step is that I'm able to cut the angle and attack my opponent much faster than if I'm stepping further away. I can get much closer to him much faster and attack much faster. Again, it comes with its inherent problems, but if you are skilled enough to pull it off, it does have its advantages over the 45-degree step. Coming back to just the open triangle, as we call it in the Filipino martial arts, in Shastra Vidya, you have what they call the bird's foot. So you have the triangle as well as the line right through the middle. And this again is there in Pekiti, but it's just not called that. And this middle line refers to center line, and that refers to where attacks from my opponent are coming. It also refers to where my opponent is standing. So a lot of times you see this, that when people are doing open triangle footwork, they're facing there or they're facing there, but that's not where my opponent is. My opponent is here. I'm stepping offline of the attack of my opponent to get to the outside, to get a better angle, or so I can step back in, get out of the way of the weapon. My opponent is on center line. The attacks are coming on center line. So again, you have that same concept. In Shastra Vidya, they call it the birth foot. In Pekiti, we call it an open triangle with center line. The last thing I'm going to be talking about is the idea of blocking and how both Shastra Vidya and Pekiti approach it. Now, it's not that we don't have blocking motions in both arts. Anyone who's familiar with 64 attacks knows these 4 walls, which on the surface look like blocks. However, both Shastra Vidya and Pekiti, stemming from warfare arts, the idea or the concept is that I want to be able to go from, I want to be able to finish each engagement as quickly and effectively and efficiently as possible. And whenever we're talking about blocking, the idea that it generates, that word generates, is an idea of a block and then an attack. In Pekiti and in Shastra Vidya, those are not separate things. Every movement is meant to be an entry that will then lead to the ending of the fight. Eventually, the entry and the ending of the fight become the same thing. There's no separation anymore. That's the elevation of skill that you have. So that even movements that look like blocks, actually what they are is, I'm finding a way to enter. So if there's an attack coming from here, I'm not going to block and then attack. As I am protecting myself from the oncoming weapon, I am also using that as an entry. So I'm not staying in one place. It's not separate motion. It's all the same motion. The entry protects me as well as gets me past my opponent's weapon so that I can then look to finish the fight. Shastra Vidya has the same concept, that they don't waste time with sort of defense in this way. Every movement that they have is geared towards getting closer to their opponent so they can deliver a finishing strike. In both arts, offense is king. Offense is what we're always trying to do. We're always trying to move through our opponent as quickly and efficiently as possible, being as offensive as possible, finishing the fight as quickly as possible. In Shastra Vidya, even the shields that they have, the small shields that they have, are used not just to protect myself, but to smash hands, to smash heads, and to set up bigger blows with my primary offensive weapon, with a slash or a thrust. It's never just used to block. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, if you learned from what you saw, please do like and share this video. If you have anything to add to the conversation, leave that in the comments down below. All of these things really do help out the school and the channel a lot. A huge thank you to all of our patrons. Thank you so much for your support. If you'd like to know more about our Patreon page and the exclusive content that we offer there, check out the link in the description I'm going to leave down below. Lastly, our online class is up and running. Our residential program is up and running. So to train with us from wherever you are in the world or to come visit us in Goa, check out the email address I'm going to leave in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching and see you in the next video.